This is a teaching sample showing with contrasting thread that the two edges of that tailor's tape has been machine stitched down. And I use contrasting thread so that people could see it easily. And of course here is the French collar canvas on this teaching sample on this side, so we can develop that and see what that's like. And then over here it is the HIMO. So we can, as we pad stitch this in our class, we can see what the two sides look like and feel like. But this tailor's tape or twill tape can be machine stitched on, or it can be hand cross stitched on. So here is that stay tape, tailor's tape or twill tape, hand cross stitched on to the undercollar in this manner. So here's that cross stitch, and of course I'm stitching in red so that I hope that you can see that a little more clearly. But this is the cross stitching on the tailor's tape or twill tape. So here's a word about pad stitching. It's with a single thread waxed, and it starts here. You come up, take a bite, come back up, take a bite. That bite is horizontal, which creates the diagonal as you come back, take a bite, and so forth. When you come to the top or the end, you simply jump over and come back down. And that creates that chicken feet looking diagonal. This is, of course, way bigger for illustration purposes, but this is how that pad stitching works. Another method for stitching down the tailor's tape or twill tape is to just slip stitch each side very smoothly this way. Cross stitching on this side or slip stitching on this side. Regardless of what method you use, you want to make sure that on the outside we see just tiny pinpricks of the thread coming through. We don't want to see any threads traveling a long distance on the outside. We want all of those stitches to be as invisible as possible on the underside. I should say something about the thread you're using. There are skeins of pre-waxed hand sewing thread that you can buy. They're very handy. They come in all kinds of colors. You can see the color here in this diamond. You'll never want to pull a thread from this diamond. That's just to see what color it is and all of that. If you pull a thread from this diamond, you'll make a tangled mess. What you want to do is pull the thread from the bottom, and there's your pre-waxed thread ready to stitch with. You can also use regular thread. Just make sure that you wax it so that it can slide in and out of the fabrics easily. So those are two choices. This is very handy, pre-waxed, pre-cut for you. Speeds up your work quite a bit. Once you have the tailor's tape or twill tape on, next you want to start pad stitching the collar stand. Some people pad stitch when it's flat and then iron it, or steam it rather, after. Sometimes I steam it first and then pad stitch. It's really up to you how you want to do that. Frankly, I've done it both ways, and I don't see much of a difference. That comment might horrify some tailors, but nonetheless, there we are. So often what I do is I take the collar with the tape stitched on, fold it at that roll line, and sort of finger press it so that the collar fall starts springing and rolling away from that. And I pin it to a ham at an appropriate spot on the hem where it will achieve approximately the circumference of the coat. And then I will steam that. If my hand is the iron, I will steam it from out here, just to start encouraging that the two layers to start falling and behaving like they belong together, which is the idea. So I do that. You don't want to actually crease it just yet. Once you have the tape on and this roll line lightly creased, next it's time to start doing the pad stitching that goes up and down on the collar stand. If you're one of those costumers that has avoided learning how to use a thimble, now is when you will be forced to, because doing this much hand sewing will dig a hole in your flesh, which will, as you might imagine, slow you down considerably, because the needle will seek that hole repeatedly and dig it deeper and deeper. So now's the time to find a needle that fits and start working with it. So starting at the center, and it's best to just take a small bite and go over that again. We don't want to see a bunch of lumpy knots in our pad stitching. This stand is rather short, so it's about 1.25 inches total. So I'm going to just divide that in thirds and have this pad stitching be about, oh, that looks like about 3/8 of an inch, going all the way up to the roll line or the tape, and then coming over, taking another stitch, taking a tiny bite, but it still creates that diagonal. Another tiny bite, but it creates that diagonal. And again, I'm using red thread here so that you can easily see what we're doing. If we were doing this for real, we would choose a thread that matches the outside so that these tiny, tiny bites that I'm seeing on the outside would be nearly invisible. You would start at center back and pad stitch up and down to the outside. Then you would start at center back, pad stitch up and down to the other side. Once you have the collar stand pad stitched from center to this side and then center to that side, then it's time to start pad stitching the outside, the collar fall. And these pad stitchings, these chicken feet, run from side to side. Again, you'll want to start near the roll line at center back, pad stitch this way, turn back, come back this way, and so forth that way. As you get out here into the corner, you'll want to make your stitches a little smaller and closer together so that you're quilting that corner a little more firmly than around in here. Sometimes people will, because they've steamed this in a round to go around the neck, sometimes you'll see people put a couple straight pins in here so that the collar, French collar canvas doesn't shift this way at all, and that's just fine. What that helps to do is helps maintain that 1/8 of an inch, that the felt is longer than the collar canvas. It helps to maintain that 1/8 inch relationship running parallel. Leave the tailor's tape or twill tape long here. When we join the collar to the coat, we're going to have the tape jump cross over that seam so as to create a continuous roll line that way. So don't be snipping that off. So here again, we'll start this way. I like to see if I can maintain a bit of a circle here where it's like roll pinning and flatlining. You're stitching it in the manner in which it's going to live. So here again, I'm not taking a knot here. I'm taking a small stitch, stitching over it, and then I'm starting my pad stitching this way. I'm making these pad stitches about a 1/2 inch long, and you'd continue that way. So here I am down at the end, and I've taken fairly, even stitches, but there isn't enough room to take that same length of stitch, so don't take that same length of stitch, just take a slightly shorter one and come down a little bit. Of course, this is very normal, that gets caught, and then return, making that chicken feet pad stitching pattern. It's all right for the edges to have little extra stitches in it. Everybody knows that that's what you have to do in order to have it walk down that angled line and so forth. So it's perfectly fine. And you would repeat to center back and back again and so forth until your overcollar is pad stitched. If you find that you run out of thread here halfway through a line of pad stitching, just simply take an extra little stitch and cut that off and then start the next one. That just happens. It's fine. It's not a problem. There's my little extra anchoring stitch, and then we just continue on. As you get to the center back, I find it difficult to pad stitch through that double layer where we did that lapped seam on the French canvas. So honestly, and nobody ever knows this until this very moment, I don't pad stitch through that thick part. I know, tailors across the planet are horrified, I tell you. When you get to the outer edge, just pad stitch up to your collar line. Don't pad stitch into the seam allowance. Otherwise, as we trim that away, you'll be cutting away your pad stitching, and it will be less stable. You'll see here that I've been running parallel to the roll line, and as the collar spreads out, the shape of it spreads out this way, here at center back, the line is right on the pad stitching line, the thread stitching is right on the line, but here it's angling away. That's perfectly normal. When we come down and return, we'll just return to here, come down and return to here, and so forth, and we'll finish out the collar that way. So here is this half of the collar. Pad stitched up and down on the stand, pad stitched the lengthwise of the collar. You can see that I ran out of thread here. There's that little tail. You want to clean up your excess tails of thread. You can see here where I had to turn around and come back, and so the thread is showing irregularly. That happens, that's just fine. And here on this outer corner, I made the pad stitching smaller, tighter, firmer together, closer together to firm up that outside corner of that collar notch. You do that on both sides, leaving this tail, as I said before, for a later step, and that is the construction of an undercollar.